Hey everybody.
Hi everyone.
It's March already.
Wow, spring is rolling in.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know.
In Montana, that's
Yeah.
not, not so certain.
I did see some daffodils and camellias and crocus and Daphne Adora in Portland recently when I was there for just a few days. But there are none of those here. But we do have this blue sky and this beautiful snow. And so we're speaking to you again from our deck in Yellowstone, in the Yellowstone ecosystem.
Yeah, Bozeman,
Yeah.
Montana.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, northern edge of the Yellowstone ecosystem. Speaking of Yellowstone, what a great time we had presenting at the Yellowstone Summit, which, if you haven't heard of it, the programs, which feature over 30 presenters, including some of the foremost experts on what makes Yellowstone tick, from wolves to cougars to botany to geology. That's going to be available for the next year, and for a very reasonable price you can access those presentations.
Yeah, it just was over the past 3 days, and we got to do a live Q&A yesterday afternoon that was well attended, and what a great conversation. So we really do appreciate the work of the folks who were involved with the Yellowstone Summit. So you check that out. And so here we are, March, and we are all very aware that there's conflict going on. It's very unsettling, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia and all of the implications of that. The way it harkens back to colonialism and the whole notion that our civilizations are based on right now, these days, and that is that you can own land. And so we're really in a position that begs the question, what does the natural world have to teach us about being in conflict?
Well, and I think war is maybe the ultimate expression of that separate thinking that we talk about so often in full ecology. That's the end point, when you get separate enough from your neighbors and from the rest of the world, and certainly the planet as well, then a kind of war and a high level of destruction are what we get.
That is what we get. Back in 1940, Margaret Mead wrote that war is an invention. It is not a biological imperative. And
that's really interesting, because if you look at a lot of the archaeology that's happened in the last 20 years, if you go back very far, in many places in the world, 3,000 or 4,000 years, certainly by 10,000 years, you just don't see the evidence of war that you do after wealth starts to be concentrated in the era of intense agriculture. And so this notion that, well, we're just wired to war each other,
we're not.
It's just, as Margaret said, it's an invention, not a biological imperative.
Yeah. And other biologists are finding that out too, and we're looking into that right now. As usual for our months, I'll go on and mention this, but we'll do a deeper dive into this question: what does the natural world have to teach us about conflict, and of course, about dealing with conflict. Conflict is really inevitable. But in the deep dive, we'll be doing more reading and more looking into what is the story here. There is some more recent information about how we really aren't biologically oriented or evolutionarily oriented towards war. This is a thing that is really quite unnatural, and only humans do it. Only humans amass troops. Only humans use weaponry. Only humans do this kind of separate and superior violence to each other.
We were talking at the Yellowstone Summit about how there are neuronal circuits established in our brains, talk about evolution, that are dedicated to empathy, to fostering empathy. So, as we've said many times, humans are cooperative, perhaps the most cooperative species. It doesn't always look that way, but nonetheless, we are. That's really our wiring.
And so the place that war comes from is really, paradoxically, our incapacity to deal with conflict. And we don't know about you for sure, but check and see how conflict avoidant you are. What will you do to stay out of conflict? And how has that made it so that conflicts have been more serious in the long run because you didn't talk about them or approach them or deal with them in any way when they were early and less freighted, less fiery? We do know, though, that the natural world has species in it. I mean, it's not like everything's sweetness and light out there. There are forest fires, for example. But that is not something that is done intentionally toward a forest or intentionally towards a community. There are animals.
Yeah, and if you
that
look at
show-
mammals, certainly there's territorialism, and sometimes that can get deadly. Of course, there's the predator-prey relationship. That's, I guess, a kind of violence done to survive, to feed the predator. And so certainly there are those things, but there is not this organized effort or even a significant effort, unorganized, to wipe out another species, or even to wipe out a competing adjacent territory of your own species. There's been some people try to argue, well, chimpanzees are prone to being warlike, but they're not. The killing of an adjacent male in chimpanzee society happens on average about once every 45, 47 years. But if you look at the little clusters where it has happened to a greater degree, all of those are in the wake of human interruptions with those chimpanzee societies. So removal of habitat, or hunting, unregulated hunting that goes in for bushmeat and wipes out a large number of chimps. Those sorts of interactions with humans actually tend to be the thing that make chimps more aggressive. Aggression is
You mean
something.
they learn it from humans?
No. I think it's the wholesale disruption of their society
I see.
leaves them prone to behaviors that they don't lean toward
That's instructive.
in other times.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there are lots of again encounters and struggles in the natural world. But even if you look at the way animals share and deal with conflict, a lot of times the physical violence is the last thing.
Sure.
First, if you're a wolf, you double cinch your territory so that any wolf from another territory comes in, smells it, knows that that's your territory, and if he or she decides to wander in, it's at her own risk. And then within the wolf pack, you're going to see, instead of infighting to determine the social hierarchy by beating each other up, there are ways that animals respond, that the wolves respond, to reinforce the social hierarchy of their society, of their pack. They might put their ears back. They'll get the fur
Ruff.
on their necks up. And those sorts of clues help give everybody else the information that you need to stop short of us tearing each other up. So there really is in nature just a tremendous amount of strategies to avoid unnecessary physical conflict. And of course, we have those skills as well.
Well, we don't use them very well. And I would say, or to acknowledge conflict and deal with it directly rather than waiting for it to get way out of hand, denying it and waiting for it to get out of hand. And, we know now it's far more complicated than Gary and I are able to speak about now. But we do know that we've become, as humans, so sophisticated with our capacity for destruction and for mass destruction that it no longer is simply about a matter of territory.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a matter of environmental degradation and certainly human cost in human lives. And, it's starting to, it threatens, not starting to, war threatens other life systems. It has great implications for the whole of ecology.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that sometimes the war we've sort of launched against the planet, which has resulted in climate change, this would be a very good time to really pull forth that wiring toward empathy and compassion, cooperation in the next 30 years or so, because climate change is going to present stressors in certain parts of the world where suddenly agriculture no longer works, where people are engaged in mass migrations, running for some place where they can actually feed themselves, and that's going to bring a heightened
find water.
sense of tension. And
Yeah.
so we need every skill we do have hardwired in us to adjust to those sorts of changes without feeling like this is yet another reason to deal with a problem by going to war and killing each other.
So in the Full Ecology book, we offer 4 orientations to help us reclaim our human nature, come back to the truth of who we are as human beings, as nature in nature. And so the first step that we've mentioned before is to stop. And that step is one that is modeled to us by the natural world all the time. We invite you this month, in addition to considering this question, what does the natural world have to teach us about conflict, to consider the natural world in the way that it is always stopped. In this present moment, the trees right now, the breeze right now, the air right now, around here, the plants right now, and the plants in Portland as well that are blooming, they are stopped. And from there, they assess what next. And they know how to move from that. And so this is another thing that is
I think that
vital.
stopping really, for nature, is what you said. It's present moment. It's not some sort of conscious decision where I'm going to just pause here, the lion says, and wait 5 minutes and assess. It's second by second assessment of what's really happening in my environment, and what's the best reaction based on what's really happening. Not what I'm imagining, not what my story and my culture says must be happening with somebody I don't trust and somebody I don't know, but what really is happening.
And aggressors would argue that that's exactly what they're doing, that they're assessing the moment and responding in the appropriate way. And so the question then becomes one of, is that really so? And what are other skills that we can bring forward that are far more consistent with who we are as nature in nature? What are those? Are we just making this up? Or is there actually something there for us to learn about how to be in conflict, how to be present, how to speak with each other clearly and listen to each other well when the first little bits of conflict are arising, so that it doesn't have to get to the extreme measure of warfare, for example.
Yeah, and of course, aggression of any kind, whether it's emotional, psychological, or actual battle or other violence, that does some pretty rough things to our biology, to our hormone systems, to our blood pressure, our heart rate. You can't live with that sort of violence or the perception that violence is just about to hit me without it taking its toll. It's probably as damaging in some ways, and this research is still kind of out, but to the aggressor as it is to the victim. So, what would be the action that would sustain our health and our lives as human beings? Certainly war does just the opposite.
And at the same time, our brothers and sisters and non-gender specific dear ones in Ukraine are frightened and are confused and are determined to defend their country all at the same time. And so any small thing that you can do, that any of us can do in support of the Ukrainian people is part of being nature in nature. We are
another one of those situations
connected.
where what you do makes you healthier. What you do to help them makes you healthier. What you do to help them makes them healthier. The giver and the receiver tend to both have significant psychological benefits in those kinds of situations, as you've talked about often with first responders in the case of fires and other natural disasters.
Everybody benefits, but I guess I paused there because it's very different from the missionary impulse. It's very different from the we know what's best for you, and so here, take this Kool-Aid, these T-shirts that have logos on them that we just really don't like anymore. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about support that may be the support of spirit, It may be the support of donation, strategic donation. It may be the support of connecting in whatever ways you can with organizations that know better than you do how to provide support to these people in this time.
So
yeah,
what have we done?
the other thing I want to say is that it is all about connection. And that's what it comes down to over and over again. War is not about connection. And we're talking about the fact that we are all connected and our behaviors do have an impact.
And so, I guess we need to say when the deep dive is.
So the deep dive is the 8th on Tuesday, and we'll be gathering at 6 o'clock Mountain Time for an hour.
No.
And we'll look forward to seeing you there. If you're not on our mailing list, please go to full consultation.
Full consultation. That's not going to do it.
Fullecology.com. And sign up, and we'll make sure that you get notice. You can also be in touch with us.
Connect at fullecology.com. That's so
Yes.
easy. Even I can remember it.
Yes.
All right.
And so also, please do consider and check out our retreats this summer. We have one in May from the 15th to the 19th in Yellowstone itself, where we will be taking advantage of Gary's vast experience and really quite intimate knowledge of the Yellowstone ecosystem to take us into hidden places in Yellowstone. So check that out on our website. And then the second one is also in the Yellowstone ecosystem outside of the park in a beautiful area called the Centennial Valley.
Yeah, we'll be at the J Bar L Ranch, and this is one of the most perfect western landscapes you could ever imagine, right down to the fact that the Red Rock Lakes National Wildlife Refuge and all of the fantastic waterfowl, as well as the animals around that area, wolves, moose, bear, they'll all be there waiting for you.
Yes, and so check that one out too. We'd love to see you there, of course. All
Thanks
right.
for being with us.
Yeah, we'll talk with you again next month.
Bye for now.
Have a good month, take good care, and be kind to each other.
Yeah, be connected.
Yeah. All righty.
Bye.
Bye.